Thank you everyone for joining us. Looks like we've got our all of our attendees here today. My name is Chelsey Lambert, and thank you so much for registering for today's session. So we're going to be talking about 3 cold calling strategies for year-end closes. This session is being recorded, and as we move through these 3 strategies, I want you to feel like you can type in your objections or questions that you're getting from legal professionals. This should be interactive, and we can workshop through some of those challenges that you're experiencing on today's call. So to tell you a little bit about myself and the Legal Tech Media Group, I founded it with my partner, Kathy Kenton. Both of us have been in the industry for quite some time in a sales and marketing capacity. So from actually picking up the phone and making hundreds of calls per day early on in my career, selling to law firms, to designing marketing strategies, bar association relationships, and helping vendors in the space craft their entire strategic plan. Kathy and I both have a tremendous amount of experience in that area. As an Evolve Law member, you are invited to attend the regular webinars and mastermind calls that are being provided to you as part of your membership. And this is something that Evolve Law put together here in the last couple months. I strongly encourage you to especially take advantage of the mastermind program. To give you a breakdown on how we both work, I teach much more tactical execution. So how we actually get the messaging and marketing and implementation of everything from marketing software to campaigns and sequences and sales strategies out the door. Kathy is strategic and teaches at a high level things related to, in the mastermind program, things related to messaging, positioning, overall strategy for your product, selling to 2 different areas of the vertical, such as what should you be saying to law firms compared to what you should be saying to in-house counsel or in-house staff. So without further ado, we're going to jump in today. If we haven't met in person, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I really appreciate you taking an hour out of your day. For some of you on the West Coast, a little bit early this morning. This session is being recorded, so if you missed something or you want to share it with a colleague, we'll be providing that recording to you after the fact. So I want to start off with this quote because we're coming up on year end. We've been in the throes of the holidays since Halloween, and this is one of my favorite quotes, that in the middle of every difficulty lies opportunity. This is a time of year when people tend to just say, my numbers are my numbers, I've done everything that I can, and I'm going to coast. I'm going to coast until January 1st. It is what it is. If I can get a layup before the end of the year, great. But I want you to recognize the fact that when all of your competitors are detracting, they're pulling back, you should be expanding the amount of action that you take. You should be multiplying the amount of action that you take. And while our inboxes might be full of Cyber Week deals and offers from everything, every website you've ever visited in the history of your internet usage, the phone is not always ringing. And I think that there is a tremendous amount of opportunity for all times of the year for the people who are willing to put in the work and pick up the phone. And just to give you an overview of the 3 areas that we're going to be covering today, these are 3 strategies that I have personally delivered as a salesperson. The win-back quality control, did a little bit different approach to sales. We're going to be diving in and breaking each 3 of these strategies down. The money-back guarantee, and then the first quarter pilot. And I'm going to also talk about the mentality of the lead and the assumption close, where we actually assume that they are going to close to find out whether or not they are the real decision maker. How frustrating if you've ever been in this situation where you think you're getting it to the finish line and now you find out the person that you've been talking to for the last 6 months isn't the one actually signing the paperwork. Now we got to start all over again, and I got 2 weeks to make my quota. So let's dive into how to identify those challenges before it's too late or before we're running out of time. So the reality of your sales funnel, and these are just cold, hard numbers. Data doesn't lie. For every deal that you want to have closed, you need to be working 10 total. So it's kind of a 10 to 1. And this is just the reality of how things shake out. I think a lot of times as salespeople, we get into a rhythm where, we filled our pipeline and then we go and we start closing it. And we fill it back up and we start closing it. And towards the bottom, when we've only got, 10 deals left and we're banking on that big one that's a certain dollar amount, or we are assuming because they've given us a verbal that 3 of them are just going to, come across the finish line here in the next week. And all of a sudden, life happens. Somebody has a family emergency. Budget isn't there. They no longer even work at that company anymore. I've had that happen where you call the next day and all of a sudden the person's been fired, or they decided to take another job and left you hanging. Stuff happens. So the reality is that the amount of action and effort required to meet your goals should be a 10x multiplier. So 10 deals required for every 1 that you need or assume will be closing, which means that we also need to be working that sales pipeline. 100 to 120 calls a day if you're selling software in the space that requires a demo or a meeting, a sales meeting booked. 100 to 120 calls per day cold will result in an average of about 3.5 demos booked. And this is for, I would say, a reasonably experienced business development or sales development representative. 60 calls a day if leads have been nurtured by marketing from cold to sales ready. And I'm going to hang out here and talk about this for just a few minutes. So the difference between those numbers is 50%, right? So 120 calls a day compared to 60. What would you rather make? And that is the difference between just a straight, here's a list, I'm going to make a bunch of sales calls, to those leads have been nurtured by marketing and flagged or earmarked as sales ready. So we've taken a cold list, or maybe, for example, you get the entire list from a conference and marketing has been working those and they've been warming them up. Marketing and sales should be in lockstep alignment. In order to achieve these numbers, marketing should be communicating with, what are you hearing on the phone? What are the objections? What can we provide you in assets, whether that be case studies for a particular practice area, assets that they can use to stay in touch with the leads, for example, press releases or information published online about the product, or patents or news that has come out. And that doesn't necessarily have to be fresh and brand new every single day. These can be PR pieces that you're recirculating from a year ago, but maybe your leader, your prospect, has never seen or heard of before. So having that conversation about what's going out to these contacts from a marketing perspective, and how can we provide as marketers everything possible for the sales team so that they have a reason to reach out. Because on those calls, when you're calling cold into a prospect, or you're calling a prospect or emailing a prospect that has kind of been delaying or putting you off, you want to be delivering value. You want to be showing an example of why your solution can help their business. So if marketing and sales are working together, then that 120 calls a day can be 60 calls a day. However, I do recommend, especially during this time of year, when we don't have as many meetings on our calendar, that all of us are pushing for that 100 or 120 calls a day. Now, how do you actually do that without burning out? I've been there. That's a rough number to meet on a daily basis. So block out your time accordingly. In one of my earliest sales roles, where we had one of the most successful sales teams in the country, we had power hours, or blocks, where we would have 2 power hours in the morning and 2 power hours in the afternoon. So from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and this was Central Time, we would be on the phone calling the East Coast. And then at 11, and then we'd take an hour break, go get a cup of coffee, take a walk around the block, get some air, just shake it out from the rejection that you may have dealt with on some of those calls, and then getting back on the phone from 11 to 12, calling into the Central Time Zone. And then in the afternoon, we would work the Pacific and Mountain time zones. from 1 to 2, and then from 3 to 4. And then in between, you're making notes in your CRM, you're following up with prospects that you had connected with the day before, you're sending proposals out, what have you. So by breaking up your day, you can get that 120 calls in, and it's much more manageable from an emotional perspective. Also helps you deal with some of the rejection that you might feel on those calls. And these are just the real numbers. The legal space, especially if you're selling software, is, as we all know, competitive, and in some cases, especially with case management, saturated. So you're going to have to put in the work that nobody else wants to do, especially if you're a startup, especially if you need in that phase where you got to be scrappy and do things yourself because you don't have a team or you're running a really lean business. So at the end of the day, purchases are made to do one of two things: to solve a problem or avoid a consequence. And here we're talking about motivators. We're talking about asking the right questions to get to the bottom of the situation, to figure out what the trigger is for this particular lead or prospect to close the deal. So to solve a problem or avoid a consequence. For example, is this something that has been on the table for half of the year by not doing it? So for example, a question would be, 6 months from now, where are you going to be if, or what is the detriment to the organization? What are the consequences that are going to happen? Where are you going to be if we don't start this implementation now? Because again, it takes time. And I'm going to talk about a formula of scarcity and urgency in these motivators later on in today's session. And then to solve a problem. So solve a problem is that low-hanging fruit. We have an issue right now. You see the solve a problem motivator come through with a lot of your inbound leads. So this is also where marketing and sales really need to be sharing data. Was this a lead? And also where your marketing software or the forms on your website need to be categorized and tagged in a certain way so that you know why that lead filled out that form or where they filled out that form. So inbound leads are more frequently associated with that solve a problem. I have an issue right now. I'm out there Googling. I attended an event. I came into your booth at a conference and I started asking questions. These are the low-hanging fruit, the solve a problem, because it's hurting right now. Avoid a consequence is where we're going to see that 6-month, 12-month, 2-year sales timeline. And in that case, we need to stress and put a level of urgency, or in some cases use scarcity, to push that close so that they avoid potential consequences of waiting until later or putting it off or procrastinating. So objection handling. Objections are rarely objections. They are really complaints used to stall the situation, used to not have to deal with this until tomorrow. So when we talk about that avoiding the consequence, what are the objections that they are coming to you with? And are they really issues, or is this something that they're just using to delay your call for another couple days? We don't have budget. Okay, well, let's have a real conversation about when you will have budget, because maybe it's the end of the year and I can do something now that I wouldn't normally be able to do for you later on. So we're going to break down these 3 cold calling strategies. And again, feel free, I'll reiterate, if you have objections or questions that you want to workshop on this call, these webinars are meant to support the Evolve Law community, and I want them to be as interactive as possible. And if we can't tackle them in this session, then you can also set up a free sales strategy call with me after the presentation. So, the assumption close. I love this one because this is really where you start to vet out what your real sales timeline is going to be. The assumption close is pushing your primary contact to make a decision to the point where you can determine if they are going to be the person signing and making payment, or if we have either a detractor or another level of management that is going to require that we sell to. So been in this situation a ton of times. It took me a few years early on in my career to realize what I needed to do, and also paid sales training that I've taken and mentor programs that I've been in to help me hone these skills, is that the assumption close is pushing on your primary contact to find out if they're going to be the one signing. And if not, I need to know that as soon as possible, because I need to talk to that next level of management. So what barriers or detractors are we going to have to overcome? This is where they start to kind of squirm in their chair. Like, oh, and the assumption close is this, is that you're having a great conversation. You've engaged a prospect. Maybe they came through the website. Maybe this is someone that you've been working with for a while, working on for a while, and you finally get them on the phone. So what barriers or detractors do we have to overcome? You start pushing like, okay, great, I'm really excited to work with you. We're so excited to be able to implement this or support your company, see you grow, whatever that value proposition is for you. So, really, what does this look like for you? So if we were, to sign today, how soon would you get started? And then all of a sudden you start to hear those pregnant pauses, the stuttering over the phone, the, well, if we're going to do this, then I need to clear it with so-and-so. I need to get budget approval. And let's just vet it out. Get the answers so that you don't have that verbal close that at the end of the year comes back and says, oh, actually, this isn't a priority for our business, and I'm just kind of like lonely and have been having calls with you for the last 3 months so that I have somebody to talk to, and I'm not really the decision maker. Or I'm leaving next month, and so now it's going to be handed off to somebody else. That's the worst feeling when you get close to closing someone and you find out you got to start all over again. So push on that contact and say, what does this really look like for you? In reality, you may have some business factors on your side, especially if you schedule implementations or migrations or other things. You may have some business factors on your side where you do need to know that timeline. So you can use a soft assumption close, such as, we have a really busy implementation schedule. I want to make sure that I reserve a spot for you. So, even if we're not signing paperwork today, can you give me an idea of your time frame? Can you tell me, if we were to say go, what you would be looking for, what your expectation is of going live, and push on them for those answers. Now, where do we start? And this is talking about our overall sales funnel. So if it's not a lead that you've actually been working, we've been talking about that assumption close. Now let's get into the cold call strategies if you've got lists. The win-back quality control is one of my favorite tactics, and this is so helpful, especially if you've had a sales team for longer than the last 6, 12, 24 months. Pull a list of all your lost deals, cold prospects, people that just completely wrote you off, maybe that you said, I'm not going to contact anymore, you had great conversations and then they disappeared on you. Pull a list of absolutely everybody that you and your sales team can think of that was lost or went cold. Then start making calls down the list. And it is not a sales call. This is framed as a customer service quality control call or a sales call in disguise, if you want to look at it that way. And the goal is to do two things, is to convert anyone who may have not had their questions answered or not had a great experience with us into either just a happy person in the marketplace that now doesn't have that bad taste in their mouth, but two, gets us information about our sales process that we can use in the future. So when you get on this call, you can say, I'm just following up. I know you had a discussion with so-and-so. And this is really helpful if you have multiple people on your sales team to actually assign leads that someone else was working on. And I know, oh, the fun of sales management, let me take all the lost leads from salesperson A and give them to salesperson B. But guess what? This is the realities of business. And sometimes a change in voice, in demeanor, in personnel can actually bring some of those lost deals through the door. I've personally been able to convert countless opportunities than another salesperson who was also very successful. We had very similar close rates, very similar amount of effort. It was just the approach or the demeanor was a little bit different, and it fit that person's personality a little bit better. So if you can, take lost deals or lost prospects from one salesperson and give it to somebody else, and in the same regard, go back the other way. So switching up the contacts that we're reaching out to these prospects. So pull those lists, assign them to different salespeople, and then start making those calls. And when you call, the conversation is very much quick and brief. You don't want them to think that you're going to tie them up over the phone for an extended period of time. So when you get them on the call, say, you know, I just was calling, I wanted to speak to Angela really, really quick. I know she had a call with Scott a few months back. Can you just tell us, you know, quick 2-3 question survey? It won't take more than 5 minutes. You know, how was your experience with us? Did we answer all of your questions? If you don't mind me asking, why did you decide not to purchase or proceed? This is a quality control call. We just want to make sure, you know, that you have the best experience with our organization. And you would be amazed at, one, the number of connects that you get, so the actual conversations that you're having, and then 2, what you learn about your sales process and about those opportunities, and then 3, how many of them will actually open the door to that purchase opportunity again. Because especially in the situations where it's been 6 months, 12 months, oh, you didn't have that feature. Well, actually, we have it now. Would it be okay if I sent you some information about it? Do you have time to hop on just a quick demo with me? I know I caught you off guard in the middle of the day, but is this something that we can make time for this week? I know it was important to you, and now that we've added it, it would I'd really appreciate it if you gave me a chance for you to take another look. So again, you're approaching this as a customer service call. It's a lot less threatening to the prospect when you are asking them their opinion about their experience with the organization. So you will identify areas where you can retrieve leads that may have been lost previously. And this is also a really great warm-up exercise for new salespeople or business development representatives. And then again, however many are on that list, we're looking at 60 to 120 calls per day. Now, the money-back guarantee. So we're talking about year-end closes. And the money-back guarantee is a cold calling strategy that allows you to put and it depends on your product, depends on your pricing, what that 90-day refund it looks like for your business. But the money-back guarantee, especially with prospects that have been sensitive to price, is what is your biggest fear? My fear is most commonly one of these 3 things: making the wrong decision, losing money, or lost time, or a combination of all 3. So when calling on prospects that haven't closed yet before the end of the year, you can use the 90-day refund to lower the risk, to give them the promise and the hope of being able to receive that money if they are not happy within that 90 days. And it gives you 90 days to absolutely wow them, to make sure that that implementation goes well, to make sure that the migration comes over. So especially in the case of doing data migration or an integration or an implementation on the software side, the 90-day full refund is really a great assurance. So beyond the trial, maybe you've already given them that 7, 14, 30-day trial. Now, I can't extend your trial, but what I can do is I can say in the next 90 days, if you're not happy, we'll go ahead and refund that money. And that has to be a conversation that you have with your CFO or from an accounting perspective. But I also want you to consider the cost of acquisition and the cost of the opportunity when it comes to generating that lead. Either they're going to walk out the door, or you guys are also going to take a risk of that refund. And you'll note that in just the statistics of how when attrition happens, if you can get a client to stay for that full 90 days, their attrition lowers every single month. So the highest risk of them actually canceling on you is going to happen within the first 30. So then you're only out that 30 days. As opposed to a trial where you keep extending and giving them the product for free. Let's lock them in and get payment, and then at the 90 days, if they're still not happy and you've done everything that you can and they've done everything that they can, which in this case you can also, depending upon the cost of your product, you can put some boundaries in place, and you can say, okay, we'll do the 90-day money back guarantee if you agree to attend training, if you agree to get us all the data that we need, get us the access that we need, participate in all the meetings. If they don't show up to all the meetings, then they don't provide the data and they're not easy to deal with. You do two things. One, you can enforce that 90-day refund and say, well, you didn't live up to the end of your side of the equation. And you can also identify customers that are going to be very high maintenance or difficult to deal with, which, as we all know, end up costing you a ton of time on the customer service front. So that 90-day full refund lowers that risk in their mind of, I'm going to invest myself in this and then I still might not be happy. At least they're getting their money back and they're able to go make a change, which tackles that making the wrong decision. They're not going to lose money because there's that refund option. And then as far as the time is concerned, they won't know whether or not the solution works for them until they try it. And so this is a great way to break down those barriers, especially for your cost-sensitive clients. Now, the third strategy, first quarter pilot. So we're coming up on the end of the year, and this is one of my favorites to use because you can do two things with this. You can express urgency, and then you can also lock in a lower price for a certain amount of time. I am not a fan of discounts. I would rather give someone extra, a couple months extra on their annual subscription or onboarding or additional training sessions, additional storage capacity. There's lots of different things that you can add on, maybe a free VIP session or strategy or office visit or something along those lines. I don't like to lower price, but for organizations, especially if you're selling to within the corporate environment where there's a lot of approvals necessary, pilots are actually quite popular. So, and also in the case where you have a very expensive or upper end of, as far as cost is concerned, product, the first quarter pilot allows you to overcome that contract barrier. So now for a corporate or a larger organization, we're not signing a 12-month agreement. We're signing a 3-month agreement. 90 days. 90 days goes by like nothing. We're limiting the amount of risk. So we're not going all the way in with this organization. And we're locking in a lower rate for only 3 months so that they can basically run an extended paid trial. And the reason why I say extended paid trial is because it's very important that they pay during this period of time. In the same way that I don't like offering discounts, I don't like extending trials because it never puts any teeth into the agreement, or it also detracts from the overall value of the solution. If I can just give it away for free all the time and keep extending your trial, they're not going to appreciate it. It's kind of the gym membership that hits your credit card, that if you're not going, you start looking at that and you're paying for not using it, or you're paying for that software subscription that you're not using. You're more motivated to actually see if it's going to work for you, as opposed to a trial where there's no urgency to do so. So with the first quarter pilot, the important thing with especially at year end, is that you use the next 3 weeks to tell them, this is the only time that I'm going to be able to offer this to you. So we only do pilots in the first quarter of the year. Now, again, it's up to you. It depends on what your sales cycle is. You can pull this, out of your hat later on in the year, or use it as a promotion from a marketing perspective to a group, especially during some of the slower months like July, after 4th of July, when we're struggling to get July numbers up. That's another good time to do it. But the first quarter pilot is I can only offer this to you before the end of the month. So you have to commit to me that in first quarter, January, when we all come back from the holidays, that you are going to allow us to do the implementation, that you're going to start using our services, that you're going to kick off the beginning of the year. And for those 3 months, for that 90 days, I am allowed to offer you this price, whether that be a reduced price per user or the offer to lock in a certain rate. Maybe it's, instead of per user, it's a flat fee for those 3 months that's billed on a monthly basis. You can figure out the pricing structure that works best for your business. If you need help with this, we can do an individual call after today's session. But overcoming that contract barrier is the biggest win with this first quarter pilot, especially in those organizations where you've got possible multiple locations, multiple levels of management. The multiple locations is a great call out, because what if you have a law firm that serves multiple practice areas, has different practice area teams, different locations? So we're going to pilot this technology at one of the offices. In the in-house or corporate environment, we're going to pilot this within this particular division and see if it works. So it isolates the risk and locks in that lower price and creates the urgency that now they're going to have to make a decision within the next 90 days. And then last, of course, best thing for you, gets that amount on the books, gets that, puts those users or that revenue amount towards your quota or your goals for the year. And you need to stress with them that you can only offer it if they make a decision before, let's say, the last week of the year, so that they're signed, ink is dry before the end of December. So one of my favorites with that pilot offering. Now, closing the sale. This is in general, just an overview of the process that you can use for any lead at any time. So qualification we covered in a lot of our earlier slides. Are we asking the right questions? Are we doing the assumptive close? Are we identifying any detractors? Moving into motivation. So is that to solve a problem or avoid a consequence? What is your time frame? What will happen if you don't start now? And then what is your time frame is for the inbounds or the low-hanging fruit where it's solving an immediate problem. How quick can we get this done for you? Is there an advantage to you doing it this week or next week so that we take care of this issue that you've been dealing with? Or would it be helpful for you if it were completed by a certain specific date? And then on the consequence front, what will happen if you don't start now? Explain the reality of where you will be 6 months from now. So if they're pushing you off, that motivation, especially in the avoid of consequences, okay, I understand. Be sympathetic and empathetic to where they are and that you are pressuring them to make a decision. That is your job, to pressure them to make a decision. But that you're doing it because you want to help their business. So you can say, I understand that you're in a tough spot, but just for my knowledge and for us to be on the same page, if we don't start this now, implementation takes time. I have to schedule with my solutions engineers. I have to get your migration started. We have to clean the data. There's issues that could potentially come up that are going to add time to this timeline. So let's say that we don't start for another 6 months. What's going to happen between now and then? If you have access to the budget now, is it still going to be there in 2019? And just call out some of those real life factors, the reality check of the situation of what's going to happen if they don't do it. And then that's a great transition into scarcity. So scarcity being that it's the end of the year, I'm only going to be able to make deals for a certain period of time, right? Like I've got leeway with my manager. I've got the ear of management, whether it be the pilot, the 90-day money-back guarantee, giving them additional users or a different pricing structure. That scarcity is my opportunity to help you, and I only have the leeway to do that between now and the end of the next 2 weeks. So if we're going to do this, we got to have a real conversation. And I'm not saying that to pressure you. I'm just saying that because that's the reality. And you'll get a lot of information and confirmation and honesty from the prospect as to how realistic it is that they're going to close. And I would rather go through my pipeline and have a realistic expectation of what deals are going to come through the door, so that I know that if I got to get back on the phone, what I have to do from an effort perspective to hit my numbers before the end of the year. So that transition into scarcity leads us into the urgency of, okay, if we're ready to do this, I'm going to send you the paperwork right now. If you have the ability to send them an electronic contract over hello sign or something else, don't let them get off the phone. Ask them to open that email. You've already got them on the phone. They're already captive. So, okay, you're ready to do this right now, solo, small firm. All right, I'm going to send it to you. Did you get it? I want to make sure you receive it. Can you open it for me? And then take them through it. Okay, I want to read it first. No problem. I got time. What questions do you have? And hang out. And if you can get them to sign it with you over the phone, great. That's the most ideal. That final, one call close would be fantastic. If not, do not leave that call without setting up your next step. So what is our next step? Who needs to be on the phone? Do you have access to their calendar? Are they in the office? When do they go on vacation? Really, really, really big important one as we near the end of the year. When do they go on vacation? Because now I know that if I don't get this deal closed before the management or the decision maker walks out the door, that's not happening until 2019. So again, qualify, ask the right questions, do that assumptive close, find out the motivation. Are we solving a problem or avoiding a consequence? Push on and explain that scarcity of, I only have 2 weeks to be able to do deals like this. And I have yet, on the purchasing side, as a business owner, ever run into a salesperson who worked at a software company that coming up on the last couple of days of the month or the last few weeks of the year, or the last day of the year, that wasn't able to make some deals. And when I didn't sign, I kicked myself because the prices went back up a month later. And so call those things out of, look, I'm able to do this pilot for you. I'm able to offer you a 90-day money-back guarantee, but you've got, 5-6 days. When does this decision maker go on vacation? Let's get this done. And then call out the value. It doesn't have to be such a contentious situation. Reinforce why they're doing it. Reinforce your mission to help their business. Call out the case studies of how many other law firms or legal departments you've been able to help. Send them testimonials. Offer to send them any supportive information or assets that can help them get the decision maker on the calendar and push that deal through. So again, that urgency of, if you can't close them on that call or on that next couple of calls, getting those calendar appointments on the books before it's too late. So we have about 10 or so minutes for questions. I've included my contact information here. Again, we were very, very excited and happy. I speak for my partner, Kathy, and I, to be part of the Evolve the Law community. We are going to be providing education to you on a monthly basis in the form of articles, the webinar that you attended today, her mastermind call, which is a workshop call that you can attend. That's going to be next week. I encourage you to register for that. My direct email is on the screen, as well as a link to my calendar. So if you want to set up a free sales strategy session with me, I'm happy to workshop some of the issues that you may be challenged with here in the last few weeks of the year, and also talk about your sales strategy and building a sales team for 2019. So please feel free to enter your questions into the questions pane, and or email me directly or make an appointment on my calendar. And we'll just see if we have a couple of questions come in. All right, great question. It is, if it's just myself and my co-founder supporting our current client base, how much of our time should be spent working on business development activities and marketing? So that's a really tough spot to be in, and I commend you for not only starting a company and product in this space, launching it into the space, But if you are going to aggressively grow your organization, there has to be a discussion about where you're splitting your time or who's best equipped to take on that role. So if you're looking at hitting, let's say, 1,000 users in your first or second year, then you need to be allocating and using that formula that I provided you with of how many calls a day need to be made. If you're booking a certain number of demos or appointments, what's your close rate? And that's really kind of how you work that formula out backwards to forwards. So you take your goal for 2019, whether that's 100 users, 500 users, 1,000 users that you're going to acquire, how many calls you need to make to get to that number, and then who has the time and the skill set, personality, what have you, that is actually going to be able to make that effort. And you just have to schedule your time around it. If growing your business is your first priority, then splitting those responsibilities between yourself and your teammate or your other team members is the way to get there. And any other questions while we still have everyone on the call? No? Okay, great. Well, this session has been recorded. Thank you all so much for sharing your day with me. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to contact me directly or schedule. Always happy to chat and eager to help everybody hit those numbers before the end of the year. Thank you all so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you again in class or in person at ABA Tech Show or other conference. Talk to you soon. Have a safe and happy holiday.